Alrighty. Good evening, good morning, or good afternoon to everybody out there. Hello, chat. How are you all going? Great to see everyone for this Tuesday, an exciting event. Apple event, Amazon event. What else have we got going on? Has everyone been spending lots or about to spend? We'll be going through Apple, Amazon, obviously volatility in the markets right now, put-call ratios, whether the markets move too much. A lot to cover in today's session. Quick shout out to everybody. Hello, Dr. Horton. Hello to Kevin. How are you going? Siddharth, good to see you here. Vince, Tomislav, Kartik, Dutch, BL, Yogendra. So many people coming in that have been at almost every one of the live events. MC, great to see you there. Dave G. And of course, Joel, Ruby, and so many others. Great to have everyone in the community joining us for a Tuesday Open. Got a lot of energy today. I'm feeling good, so I think we can go through quite a good amount of sessions. Hopefully, everybody in the US had a good long weekend. Feels like we're always on a long weekend in Melbourne, Victoria, as we're still locked in for the last 3 months. But it's not feeling all right today. Did anyone get on this Apple train? I'd like to ask the chat straight away: how many people are on the train to buy the rumor, sell the fact land of the Apple events? It moved like a train yesterday. The stock market could not be stopped during the public holiday, and this is often what does happen. We'll be going through that phenomenon known as kind of the run into a holiday event. Nasdaq is scary, says Tim. Absolutely. Nasdaq is pretty terrifying, but a lot of these things have moved correctly. So let's do a quick check on the markets. Let's just quickly talk about what's been happening here with our FinViz screener. We've obviously got S&P down, Nasdaq up pretty heavily actually in the futures trading session. 12,000, almost 200 coming into the market open. A lot of hype and anticipation on several key events. Russell down a little bit as well, which is a bit surprising. Russell's been an outperformer recently, as you can see in this little chart here. VIX is not really doing anything. It's not really doing too much for us. Most of Europe are really kind of like not doing too much. I mean, if you look at the FTSE, obviously you look at the UK, they're thinking about even potentially shutting down parts of the country, I believe, because of the crisis at the moment. So there's a few things that are definitely going wrong here. Crude oil up pretty heavily, and of course Brent up heavily. Some of the silver golds just kind of sitting around those breakouts that they've had recently, and US dollar, a little bit of strength in the Asian session. Timothy says 300 profit on AAPL. A few people in a couple of shares, not too much. Nasdaq still running into futures, yep. Okay, let's have a look at a few things here. So we'll go into just quickly around the markets to start off with. Let's just quickly load up this Webull screener that we use at the moment. And if you do want to potentially use Webull, I think I've got a link down below. Not really too affiliated with them, but I find them to be an okay little American kind of thing. I don't mind them, they're all right. So let's have a look at the pre-market here. We've got this set measure. I'm going to actually set this now together. I'm actually going to set it pretty high. So we're going to go really large market cap only, as we don't want to go too small coming in. We'll go 22 billion plus, obviously United States, and we'll have a look at the pre-market. So pre-market downs looks like a few banks around the world, that kind of things, few energy stocks, nothing much else that's really happening there. And pre-market ups, we're looking at some interesting ones. I mean, Snap's up, Apple obviously into the news event, and a few microchips, AMD doing quite well as well. That'll be a very interesting announcement. Is anyone excited for the new AMD technology? It looks like they're going to smash Intel on the new chips. They're going to absolutely smash them. Going over the chat here, no FOMO and not in, Siddharth says. Yeah, well, this is definitely one of those cases, Siddharth, where you're wanting to trade into the event, and that's really what you got to be doing. Siddharth said, kept waiting for that Apple 100, should have just bought chunks on the way down. So one thing is, yeah, that is often what does happen there. We do get kind of a bit complacent with sometimes not averaging into our price. The problem is when you're a trader, you often want the perfect price, don't you? You want that price that's like, oh, I wanted, let's say 3,200 on the S&P. Well, where did it get to? It got to 3,209. The problem is it stops just before the level often, and that's why somewhere around the range you have to start just basically loading in. It's a lesson. Look, will we see a cheap price on Apple again one day? Of course we will. So it's just one of those lessons where if you're investing, dollar cost averaging is a thing in quality stocks. Trading, you do have to be a bit more precise. You can't just say, I'm going to buy here, I'm going to buy there. Government to talk today, says Antonio. We're having 3 times as many cases as in March in the Netherlands. Yes. So I think all of Europe is like that. Siddharth says no stimulus until January, calling it now. Well, I still kind of think there's not going to be any agreement coming into the election. I don't know if it suits either side, really. But time will tell. Okay, so let's just quickly talk about some of these markets. We'll talk about the S&P first, and then we will talk about the Nasdaq. So S&P moved off very heavily. Now, we've expected this heavy move. We talked about it. We spoke about it early last week. We spoke about it in the middle of last week, and then, of course, it did end up closing above that 34.28, 34.30 area. We've got our bullish close. We also got it to break past a wick rejection. On the weekly, it was doing very special things. If we have a look at things like the Nasdaq, so we load up the Nasdaq later, you'll see it go past those wick levels. And really what this is telling us as traders, as investors, that there's a lot of pent demand, but this doesn't necessarily mean a good move. What just happened then? We had 1, 2, 3, 4, and what could be a 5th bullish day in a row. Usually you don't have that many giant bullish candles without a pretty serious pullback. We've moved well above this resistance. We're super far away from 20 moving averages. And let's just go to a 15-minute here on the futures and just talk about what's going on here on the 15 minutes. So we'll zoom out these futures and we'll go to the Nasdaq. Just quickly get out of here. So look at this run. This run barely was touching the 15-minute. It actually got so far away from it. Let's go to the US 100, the Nasdaq. Talk about this. The 15-minute has been pretty much the 20 moving average, which has been respected. That's fairly rare in stock markets to see that aggressive move. You look at an hour, it only just came back in futures trading today to the 20 moving average. Very, very large moves. I would not be surprised at all to see a relatively strong Fibonacci pullback at some point. Now, do we need to reach even higher than we are right now? I think 12,200 actually makes sense on the Nasdaq to find some resistance. We go to the 4-hour, I think everybody will see why. Previous support here might act as a little bit of resistance into the market open. But if we do go continuously bullish, I think test of the high and then some shorting off. We'll be looking at put-call ratios in just a moment. And those put-call ratios are telling us we're seeing a huge amount of puts getting taken out of the market and calls are back in. Calls are certainly back in the markets right now. Brian says, we are in Ireland. It's all wrong. Second lockdown to come here for sure. Well, these will all eventually take their toll if no further stimulus does come into the markets. Stuart says 3-tier system in the UK, only Liverpool tier 3 loads. Okay, so it's a partial shutdown. Yep, similar to Australia then in that aspect. Keep the questions coming through, by the way, and feel free to ask anything. We'll answer it throughout this session. Remember, if you have a question, somebody else out there probably wants it answered as well. Mark says, Tom, S&P 500 looking like it will hit 3,600, then 3,500, and then turn around. I could technically agree with you there, Mark. We'll be going through that one in just a moment, but it looks like these markets are really moving at such a fast rate that they want to go towards these resistances and then give fairly decent pullbacks. Resistance trend line from far back as 2012 is about to be hit. Yeah, so that's the one. I know a lot of people have been talking about that. We will bring that on the charts. And Takula says, or Kevin says, 35.30 is reversal for the S&P. Matthew here would like me to check the ASX 200. I certainly will. Marlene Pullen joined the TC community, the trading community. Welcome, Marlene. Great to have you here. You've got access to all of those great emotes and everything else. We'll be adding a few more shortly. Thank you very much, Marlene. So we're very, very far away. We've hit the 12.2 in trade, rejected it once, and now we're about to open up around this area. That's probably what I'm going to be trapping coming into the market open. I think there's a lot of hype into the tech events, especially the Apple event. We'll talk about that also just a moment. So let's just quickly go over to yesterday's moves during the Columbus Day public holiday. People were feeling a bit frisky. They must have mentioned something to one of their family members and everyone was getting on the train. Look at Apple's move, 6.35%. Amazon also 4.75% in terms of moves coming in here. We did have some decent moves in the banks as well. We kind of thought that might start to come through. We'll be testing and having a look at the technicals of these banks. It's one of the sectors that hasn't performed as well. So the banks are one of those areas where we do expect a little bit of an increase as money rotates into those again after the other rotations in utilities, materials, and energy last week. But Apple probably the standout there. Go over to the put call ratios. Anyone been looking at these put call ratios? We are moving down. This is the stock charts put call ratio oscillator. And you can see here that the put call ratios have been declining steadily into this move up. So once we got through that resistance, a whole bunch of calls started coming into the markets and puts were reduced. Overall, what is this telling us? We're probably starting to reach the end of this initial bull run through. We are going to probably see weakness soon. Traditionally, when the put call ratio, it looks like, has gotten around this 0.6, we've seen selling in the markets. Absolutely. Radian, said short squeeze at US Open in my guess. Monday was a holiday in the US and hence a big rise in low volume. Yes, yeah. I was pretty much making a video about that today, but I forgot that it was open yesterday. I didn't check my account yet. So yes, there was a lesser amount of volume than you usually would see, but a hype in anticipation. So put call ratio is really coming down. We know that at these levels, especially leading into the start of September, we were having relatively historically over the last kind of 6 months, low put call ratios, and that led to, of course, the bigger crash. Even if you look at the pre-crisis periods, we had pretty low put call ratios coming in, and then they went crazy during that crisis period. This led to a flash crash over here, and this one led to, of course, the corrective dip phase that we just saw. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see a 3600 or 3550, which we already reached, and then sell off on the stock markets today. Let's have a look at Apple here. It's still holding a 1.53. Oh, actually, it's gone down a little bit here. 1.17 now coming into the market open. So a little bit of a rejection there. Jacob says the markets will go up forever, infinite Fed QE. So I think QE is often misunderstood in terms of the way it actually should affect markets. If we look at the QE, and I'm meaning to do a video eventually on this, if we look at the QE in other countries, probably Japan's the best case, we didn't necessarily see QE or like increased liquidity and increased bond buying act that positively towards the markets. They've actually been stagnating for quite a while. They haven't been doing as well as possible. Let's have a look at the ASX 200 because I am aware that for a lot of Australians, we're starting to get into the later hours, and a lot of people out there do want to see the analysis on this. It's also very relevant to our American and European viewers because we're seeing these through other indices. We're seeing key resistance levels being reached at all the same time, and this is usually showing us that we may break through, and that will be very bullish for this market, but this is where you start to see selling usually after such an aggressive move. We had our budget come out. Obviously, that means an injection of capital. It's very, very interesting to read between the lines of budgets. Our budget in Australia hit small caps. It specifically hit small caps, gave them sick benefits. They get sick tax deductions, and that is why so many things have moved. But it also promoted spending and promoted transactions. and therefore some of our banks did well off that. I'll be very interested to see whether with the Democrats or the Republicans win, what their policies are going to look like and how that's going to shape and change the way that we're going to invest in sectors over the next 4 years. I think it's going to be fascinating to have a look at that. Remember, you can make long plays based on government policies. Trump was no different. When Trump did the tax cuts, look how well certain indices, certain sectors did under the Trump administration. They certainly did. So here we have very strong resistance at the 61.92, 6200 level. I think this is a classic case of a 1, 2, 3. If our market gets through, punches through here and closes above, it's going to be incredibly bullish to the ASX 200. We would expect a pullback, pretty much going to happen. A pullback will happen on this market, and then onwards and upwards. This is signifying potentially always all the way up to maybe a 64, 65, even a 6800 strike on at the ASX 200. I very much like this level. I don't think it breaks it initially straight away, but this is the key resistance zone. I think any technical analyst knows that this area matters. 6200 psychological area, everything about that. Siddharth says, Columbus Day is a government bank holiday. Most people don't get the day off work. Yeah, that definitely sucks. Kartik says, declining volume on the ASX 200. Yeah, very declined. Look at how low this level is. Now, it was up quite a lot. Remember, when you've got a declining market, especially it looks like ahead of the budget, you had quite a lot of trade going on, a lot of volume coming through. Then we've had reduced volume in the last 2 days. There would be profit taking around this 6100 to 6200 level. It's partially, though, also low because we're waiting for US to really properly open and to show us what it's got. I think people are worried about this week. A little bit of risk off taking here as we reach that resistance. Very, very interesting point. Just quickly talk about this Apple event. We'll go back over to the chat as well. And we've got a question here from Pavel. And he says, hi, Tom and chat. If they're going to be a pullback this week in NDX and SPX, how will gold react, especially after breaking 1920 key level recently? Absolutely, and these give me a few coffees there. Yeah, we'll be talking about that one. We've got a handle on US dollar. I think we're in very good technical levels for US dollar. We're going to see, of course, one of the two things play out, but both will involve very easy to trade kind of scenarios, and therefore we can bring that back into our gold silver analysis. You'll notice I've got both up here to cover very, very soon. I'm pretty excited about the TA that's going on actually in the markets right now. Some really great Forex TA, some very great Bitcoin TA. If no one saw my video and watched till the end about Bitcoin, beautiful, symmetrical, hit the perfect take profit, and I think there's still a little bit more in it. So I want to talk about Apple because this is a classic case of potentially buy the rumor, sell the fact. Apple's traded by retail traders a hell of a lot. People, it's split again for that reason as well. People like you, people like me, we love trading the Apple because it's not only the biggest stock, but also a lot of people love their products. So what is going to be shown at the event today? Basically, this is, of course, a rumor website, and the event will come up relatively soon. But I think what we're going to see is we're definitely going to see a new phone. We all know it's going to be 5G. That's certainly what's going to happen. The thing that becomes really, really strange, though, is whether we end up seeing that many other things or how many things have been delayed. It looks like they're going to delay a whole bunch of their products. And I think the market may not like that. So their little AirTag thing sounds like it's going to be delayed. Their other stuff sounds like it's going to be delayed. Even Mac shipments, I was actually surprised by these figures. Looking here at the shipments and the growth, they say it's decent growth. But the growth compared to the PC counterparts, I think, has been pretty abysmal. So unless I'm reading that wrong, not so good. The silicon chip's going to come later. It's really just going to be the phones, potentially some AirPod Pros, that kind of thing. They're still going to sell, but I'm not sure if that's enough to justify 10% in the last couple of days. And often after the event, the market does sell off. Ashok says ASX and FTSE were tracking each other very closely. Now the ASX has run away and the FTSE is faltering. The FTSE is faltering due to concerns about, of course, that partial lockdown. We just found out before from someone in the UK that it's probably going to be sector lockdowns. That's not good for the market without further stimulus. Australia is lucky because we got stimulus that hit that back end stocks. DL says, hi Tom, if ASX can get to 6,500, 6,800, could SPX reach 3,800, 4,000? I certainly do think so. I think the SPX, I think if the Democrats win, we're in for a chance of a pullback due to initial concerns and then obviously sector rotation, all of those types of things, and then follow-on effect. If it does pull back heavily due to that kind of event, remember those first 2 to 3 weeks of November are often a weaker kind of period in the US market. If you go back through history, often the first 1 to 2 weeks of November are kind of weak, and then they come in very, very strong. The Christmas Santa rally is a real thing, and I think that people are pretty bullish in general of the government spending money. So US 100, we're hitting that 12,200 handle here. The Nasdaq's hitting resistance. It could be pulling back here. We have not reached a 4-hour 20 for quite a long time. It isn't unknown to do this. During that last bull run, it didn't hit the 4-hour 20. So that's how I kind of look at it. I look at it on this left-hand side and I think, well, it didn't really hit that area on the pullbacks during an aggressive run. So we can't expect it to come back to that one. What we usually would expect it to do is something similar to last time. Actually, we'll use a 2-hour here. So 2-hour was hit quite a lot on the way up through a very aggressive, I would call it euphoric run here on the Nasdaq. We haven't even got to a 20 moving average here on a 2-hour chart. So we haven't even done that. I do think that's worrying. And if we reach 12.4 too fast, let's say we do it the next 2 days, we are going to have a pullback. Let's just quickly work out some fib pullback numbers here on what might happen. Because TA and understanding the markets is a lot like that. If we take the full run, I think it's absolutely fair to do so. We take it up to the top here, 12.4. A fib pullback will bring us down under 12,000. I would expect at least a 38.2 fib pullback. And usually what we go with is a 38.2 to a 50, and we target that zone. We target that area. That's what you're wanting to do. So in this case, if it went up that far, that's pretty much the target we would have. Now, if it, we'll get rid of that one. 1 second. Now, if it came down a little bit, like maybe right now at the 12.2, where would the pullback put us? The pullback would put us probably around 11.8 as well. So 11.8 to potentially the 11.7. Obviously, there's a lot of resistance at the previous break, but I'm not sure if we're going to come back down that far. That would be unusual. When a inverse head and shoulders on, say, the S&P goes as heavily as it has, you don't really want it coming back down to the neckline after it's moved around over 50% of the way there. Remember, whenever you have an inverse head and shoulders, if it moves over 50% of the way there, you do not want that thing coming back to the neckline. It's very bad. Buzzblad says, Apple just trying to catch up with Samsung. Well, Apple's always been behind on tech in terms of, when I say that, they're not behind on tech. What they do is they really test the technology and then they bring it in and call it something else and it's fandangled. So that's often what they do. Let's load up that US 500. Delays aren't going to be good. See what happened to Intel, says Dr. Horton. I think we're talking about Apple there. Delays are not good. And it looks like they're even going to potentially ship their phones separately. So they're going to ship each one separately. So US 500, similar to the Nasdaq, reaching that last little level of support before it bounced up to the 3,600 or just under the 3,600. Here in the futures trading session, it's undecided what it's going to do. Again, I'd be taking a fib of the whole move. You're looking at a 38.2. So whenever it starts turning around, easiest way to always trade stocks, doesn't matter what the hell the thing is literally load up a fib on that move, find a 38.2, and between a 38.2 and a 50, look for smaller time frame change of trends to the way up. That's the easiest way to always get in on the dip correction, because that's what markets like to do. They like to come down to the 38.2 and 50 zone. These are the most key areas that usually a pullback will come to. It's the easiest way to kind of trade out there, guys. That's what I always think. Tudor Rink says, Tom, did you say you were still on lockdown in Australia? Yeah, we are. And it's really annoying. But you guys don't want to hear about that. But we certainly are. We're completely locked down still. They're crazy. There'd be rioting in the streets in some countries, I think. And I think Melbourne's getting close. Let's have a look at this VIX. What is the VIX telling us? The VIX is between the 25 and the 30. For any new viewers out there, we've got 400 people here. What is the VIX really saying? The VIX is usually what we call the fear index. Why do we call it the fear index? Generally, VIX up, markets down. VIX down, markets up. We're at a critical support level here on the VIX. We've been holding it too. How weird's that? We've been holding a VIX at 25 while the market's been going up and it hasn't breached this zone and closed below. These are the CBOE contracts here. That's bizarre. Usually you would have expected volatility to continue down. So there is still fear in the market. Clearly this move is aggressive, but I think there's fear here. It's one of those things where the risk reward now is starting to go, well, wait a second, we're about to reach all-time highs. We're about to reach those previous resistances. The VIX is sitting here and it ain't budging. It's not going down. Do we see the spike today, or do we see the spike when we hit that top level? Remember, that put-call ratio is also telling us a similar thing. Puts are getting taken out of the market as Wall Street gobbles all the money ahead of some key events. John Hodges. Yes, John, I do feel you here. He says, hi, Apple alone is worth more than the entire FTSE. Great Britain is a joke. Yeah, our markets are looking sick, and it's because we've really doubled down on that idea of oil, materials. You know, a lot of our economies are based on what was old. The US market's based on so much tech. Unfortunately, Australia and Britain, we just don't have enough tech. It is a problem there. All right, let's look around some more markets. I think for the VIX, really, this is a key point. Keep your alerts on this 25 kind of zone. I expect this to probably hold now, it looks like, and not necessarily come down. Copper, Dr. Horton out there will know we follow this one. Dr. Copper basically tells us whether we've got a decent level of recovery in the markets. If this is getting slammed, then usually we're seeing a correction in the markets not far away. It's one of those lead indicators. Copper is declining. So copper has declined. Now, the problem with this one this time is it's probably declining based on China's moves against several key economies, one of them being Australia. They banned coal imports. Gone. See ya. No more coal. Thank you. Bad luck for you. Now, what that means is that we are seeing pressure being put on several key material sectors, and one of those probably is also copper. A little bit of lack of demand there due to those concerns. When we go over to the dollar index, though, things will start to make a little bit more clear of what's happened during this Asian session run. The Asian session's actually been dollar bull strength. We've got here on the 4-hour going back to the 93.21, putting resistance testing on that, hitting that 20 moving average here on the 4-hour, and then rejecting it. But what I'm thinking for dollar is this. We've got 93.40 previous support. We've got a 200 and a 50 probably going to intersect around that zone. If we see dollar strength here, what do we think is probably going to happen at this zone, at this 200, 93.40? I'll give it to the chat. What does the chat think and the community think of the 93.40 zone? What do we expect to happen there? While we wait for that answer, I'm going to read a few other questions here. DL says, hi, Tom. I don't think the markets have factored in a big second wave of, we'll call it the crisis. Areas with single-digit temp like Alaska, UK, Netherlands. This could dampen the usually bullish sentiment in November, December. I definitely agree that the market doesn't seem to care about it, and that's because it's thinking that we've basically filled the gaps of the stimulus And potentially they just don't think that having shutdowns, maybe the damage they feel is done. Remember, when we filled a lot of that stimulus, we basically were saying, hey, we're basically plugging 10% GDP. It's not going to be a 100% efficient mechanism, but they're just printing cash to fix that 10% GDP. I don't know whether the market really cares about it. I think we'll just follow the price action in this case. I am bullish over the next 12 months. I've made no assertions to say I'm not. I think I just go with the stats and I go with the price action. I've always said to everybody, noise is the problem. When we're looking at reading into fundamentals sometimes, I like looking at fundamentals, understanding the company makes cash and it's got good balance sheets and good debt and it's moving forward in the right direction with a consistent level and approach of growth. If it has that and I'm looking at good technicals, hey, I'm on board. Let's go. So we've got a lot of comments coming in here about the dollar index. We've got reject. Mostly people saying rejection. Absolutely. This would be a key level of rejections. One of those things where you get multiple dynamic supports, being the moving averages. You've got previous support over here, and you would most likely see a rejection off this zone. You should always go into the smaller time frames. If you're on a 4-hour, look for a 15-minute change of trend. Look for that lightning bolt action. It's a game changer to your trading, and then you go down. Now, 92.80 is the support level for dollar index. I think it's a very strong one as well. Very strong. We've got previous kind of big bullish move for the dollar index off this zone. And we've also got multiple supports coming through this area. I find it interesting that it's kind of hovering in this range. Let's just quickly take that little bit of range and I'll just quickly extrapolate that out to both sides. Let's have a look here. So if it did break down, notice how that little range becomes the next range down to the 92.80. Those little body closes. And if we take it up, a little bit of an overshoot. So interesting though, on the bottom, it's almost perfect. Is it setting up just to go and test that 92.80? I'm thinking dollar weakness here. And then when it tests this zone, we've got even more trades. We've got potential buy-ups. And then on top of that, we have the breakthrough retest short. And that's one of my favorites because we've got the 1, 2, 3. We've got multiple very recent touches to the zone. I love those kind of areas, especially if there's like a 20 intersecting with that zone. Beautiful TA. Doesn't matter if it's a stock. Doesn't matter if it's a currency or a commodity. They're all sweet at that area. John says, Tom, the market doesn't care about the crisis anymore because the stats say the common cold is now twice a day. Absolutely, John. I'm not going to get into any of that, the stuff with, of course, the crisis. What I think, though, is we always follow the price action and we follow what the market's telling us. That's the best thing. If we go too much into all of the kind of things that we get told, this is bad, this is good, we often lose sight of what we really want to do. I learned that I didn't learn that early in my trading career, but I definitely did learn it over some hard lessons. Cut the noise out, follow the price action. Thank you very much for subscribing there, Vera. If there's some people out not subscribed out of the 419 here, make sure you consider it. We're definitely putting on these every week. We usually do Mondays unless there's a public holiday, and we do that every single week. I think this is going to become a common thing. Even when I go to 1:30 a.m. opens, which won't be that far along, we will still be doing it. And remember, we do have a massive financial election day stream. I'll be doing a 12-hour session, I think, going through the election, going through the financials, seeing how the futures react. They go crazy during the presidential election. It's wild. It's a lot of fun. So if you don't have forexfactory.com, make sure you get your calendar alerts. Obviously, Monday, October 12th, we've got US and CAD bank holidays here. Tuesday, this is what we're looking at in terms of information coming out. So we just had some information we had there. Wasn't too probably crazy at 11:30, CPI and core CPI. And this week, there's not too much, I think, really red news to be worried about. We were meant to have, of course, the debate. Seems like that's cancelled now. We've got some stuff in Australia. And then if we go to the back of the week, we've got some core retail sales. Dr. Horton says, and this is a good way of looking at it, Dr. Horton, I like the noise, negative noise especially, great for buying on discount. Yep, Doctor has the right idea. If you're somebody that has the steel, kind of what they call it, strong hands, Doctor. You got the strong hands, then you can buy quality at a great price. What's that Buffett thing he always says? I like this quote from Buffett, by the way. I know people quote him too much, but it's like, I'd rather buy a great company at a good price than a good company at a great price. When you really understand that concept, it's true. It doesn't mean you have to invest like Buffett. Of course, you can do whatever you want, but it's a very interesting concept. And I think that if you have undying optimism, I like Druckenmiller. I think Druckenmiller's a sick trader. He's a really good, he's an investor, but he's a very good investor. And when you look at Druckenmiller and the way he approaches the market, he usually says, I am optimistic on the markets. Now, it pays to be an eternal optimist. Unfortunately, it does. I wish it didn't. But it does. It pays to be an eternal optimist, not necessarily be a pessimist. So let's have a look at silver and gold and bring this together with our dollar index analysis pre-market here. So we've got silver pulling back. It's hit the 20 moving average here and bounced off it. A little bit of a pin bar hammer coming on silver. So silver to me has a very strong box range here. We've got 26 resistance. Why is it resistance? Previous supports all the way across this silver. 26 to 2650. There's body closes and there's resistances. If we have a look at the daily, let's just quick go to the daily silver. Notice, we'll raise those. Notice the 2650. All the body closes here on the daily were at 2650. So we've got wicks at 26, body closes at 2650. So this range here is going to be very difficult for silver to bounce through. It's not going to just push through it instantaneously. There'll be profit taking there and selling pressure. On the bottom end side, if silver got back to 24.30 kind of 5, if dollar index was to go up and hit that level we saw before, the 93.40, if it hits here, where's silver going to be? Down here. 24.30. They're all going to synergize together. We're going to have previous resistance being tested as a 50 EMA would be testing at the same point. That's the kind of synergy that you want to look for in markets. Very, very cool area. Same with gold. Gold's punched through the 1920. That's very, very strong. And then we have basically been hovering just above that zone. We just hit the 20 moving average today during the Asian session. We've bounced off that. We're stuck between the two moving averages. But overall for me, I think, well, look, as soon as gold gets through this 1932, it's going to gravitate to 1940 very quickly. Previous supports will act as resistance, and then it will go probably to 1960 if it gets through that zone. Right now, it just bounced off previous resistance acting as support. It's above the 1920, and I think this is pretty much showing us bullish intentions for gold. Gold does look bullish right now. I mean, of course, anything can go bearish, but this was a critical level. It has gotten through there on the daily. It's a pretty important zone. Siddharth says, Vince McMahon, balls the size of grapefruits. Yes, I remember Vince McMahon, the old swag he used to do. That guy is burning that company that he runs, though, into the ground. I don't think anyone watch wrestling out there anymore. Does the chat watch wrestling? I don't think the community probably does. Oh, it's painful. I watched one episode during this crisis period, and without a crowd, wow. Doey says this stream deserves more likes. Appreciate that, Doey. Kevin Hall says, on the topic of public holidays, even if it's just the US and CAD bank holiday, would that stop you from taking a trade on odd pair FX evolution? Kevin, yeah, you're a good point. So it wouldn't stop me taking an Australian trade against, like, say, odd yen. I'd take an odd yen. I would take... So Monday mornings, understanding when the market's open is important. So Monday mornings in Australia here, I would trade yen pairs and odd pairs. Why would I do that? Because we're the only markets open. The Asian market's open, and of course New Zealand, Australia's open, Oceania, etc. So why would you be trading US pairs in a point where you're basically or even pound or euro when you haven't had the Europe session or the US session give you control of those? You can only trade the yen and the odd and the New Zealand and everything like that. Understanding the market's very important. Chris says not since high school 20 years ago. Not few people. No, it doesn't seem like few people watch it. Fair enough. Dino says, hey man, are you buying any more Apple before the event? So for me, no. I think the purchasers were understanding. I don't like to be the last person before the event. I think it's a buy the rumor, sell the kind of news. We had a very large, quick move on Apple. Let's load up that chart again, do some analysis here on Apple. We talked about before, they're going to announce a phone. We all know that. It's going to be 5G. There's going to be SKUs. They've made a phone for everybody or whatever. But they're not going to have necessarily the supporting cast. If they don't come out with lots of other products that they're going to be shipping, the market won't like that necessarily. The market will not like that. So here's Apple. We've got it sitting at a 126.40. It's basically moved a little bit above where even we thought. It actually opened at 120 straight away. So we were pretty bullish on it down here into the event. Very, very quick, very fast. We go to a 1 hour. It moved away from the 1 hour 20. This also tells me that even if we see a spike today into the event, that we will have to pull back to the 20 moving average on even at least the 1 hour. We can't stay away from it forever. Now we know that 20 moving average, it's based on the last 20 periods. So it has to eventually catch up. But over here, we had a super aggressive move followed by consolidation. We've got here a pretty large move already. Can it really go hyperactive into 135? For me, the risk reward becomes too much. I don't mind buying to an event, but for me, I kind of just buy in and then I go, okay, I'm happy with what I got. I don't want to take the news event. I don't want to take the lack of anticipation after it's over. That's what I usually try to get away from. Hopefully that answers it. But yeah, right now, I think Apple is incredibly far away from several key moving averages. We know that it likes hitting moving averages on the way up. If we go over to a 4 hour, it did have pullbacks into the 4 hour, even during its more recent runs. This was, of course, news in terms of it had its release, and its release was strong. And then we had the euphoria after that. But we're getting pretty far away from a whole bunch of MAs here. I think that it's reaching its kind of peak. Could it get 130 and then resistance sell? That could be exactly where it goes. Previously, it did a 128.56. Mark says, has the inverse head and shoulders been completed on the S&P 500 downward correction due? So it hasn't completed yet, Mark, in terms of what you would expect a normal TA to do. So normal TA here for an inverse head and shoulders. And a few people call me out on this. They're saying, hey, Tom, come on, man. This is not an inverse head and shoulders. Do you even know what you're doing? A few people said that to me. So look, two things. Firstly, what is an inverse head and shoulders anyway? Who cares about the pattern? Understand the market psychology more than anything else. It's a series of basically, it's tested a low. It's tested what we call the left shoulder. It's tested a right shoulder. And it's basically got a neckline. The neckline's probably the more important part. How strong is this neckline? How consistently good is the resistance at this zone? We have multiple touches here. That's what makes it. Also, remember, with a head and shoulders, right shoulder, we want it smaller, and we want serious price action coming in. Here, what we had is we had a series of higher troughs coming into the break. Higher troughs, higher peaks. That's good for trend. If we have it just basically sitting there and it goes like this and then it breaks up, well, that's fine. It looks better, but this is actually showing us momentum was there. There was strong picking up pressure. So we break through. Technically, it's saying that it should be like a 36.20. I think that the market will be completely topped out, hitting the resistance though. And I wouldn't probably ever, I never take like a pattern like this for the whole completion. I usually go 70 to 80% of what I expect. And that is usually all. I don't usually go too much more than that. But understanding with an inverse head and shoulders, the key to it all is it's the end of a trend and the start of a new trend, theoretically. But it's the price action coming into it and understanding the market dynamics on the smaller time frames that's key. Hey, Houston Vision, good to see you there. Jeremy, generally you would take it into the news and then just before the news event. That's the kind of thing. But you have to make your own decisions, obviously. Partik says, what are you going to buy? PS5 or Xbox Series X1, 2? Well, firstly, I have no idea what the hell Xbox Microsoft were doing when they named those, by the way. For any gamers out there, the Xbox is so impossible to understand what the hell they've called it. I like the Xbox controller. I'm a bit of a PC. Few people know I'm a bit of a gamer out there as well. I do like the PC, but I'll eventually get one of them. I really don't know. It seems like most of Microsoft stuff will be on the PC anyway, so I guess you would have to go with the PS5 in that case. Plus, I don't understand what Microsoft's saying. Matthew Hip, Tesla looks like it's about to break out, so we'll be looking at Tesla right now. But to answer the question on inverse head and shoulders, it isn't complete, but it's certainly gone a little bit over 50% of what we expected. The move is a bit aggressive. I prefer to see a slightly slower move. But that being said, it's where it is. So let's load up Tesla now. Now, a lot of people are getting hyped about Tesla, and I think it's fair because Tesla is starting to show us some interesting kind of movement. What have we not seen in Tesla recently? And hopefully this is the live chart. Aggressive, crazy action. It's become not the flavor of the month. It's become basically this thing where we should be trading it. Everyone's usually excited about being in it, but it doesn't look like it's trading very heavily. What's the resistance here? We've got that 450 handle. It looks like pre-market we're looking at 445. Let me just quickly load up our trade over here. So pre-market, we're looking at 445 pre-market. And of course, that is relatively strong. It's up about 0.63% on the Webull over there. This is a decent price action coming into this break. What do we know about Tesla? When it breaks, it goes psycho. That's cool. That's the good thing. When it becomes hot, it's hot. It's been incredibly not hot recently, very small moves. We have a 455 resistance. I think that's the key here. What do we know? When it breaks through though and closes, it's going to be aggressive. It often doesn't come back for the retest. Usually you would see the resistance here being tested as support. I also like the fact that it's coming in with not that much volatility. It's basically coiling. It's coiling through. So a close above will be the key. I don't think it'll come back though. I think it'll just go aggressive. And where's the clear target? Previous 520 highs. So Tesla is coiling. It's definitely not the flavor of the month. It's basically like a crazy ascending triangle right now. If you look at this low, and push through a trend line through that point. I'm more looking just at the resistance, and I'm just looking at what's a feasible kind of level that it could go to. And I think the 520 just makes sense. It got there last time. It's very aggressive on the take. That's the kind of thing. Jeremiah says ascending triangle. Jeremiah, did you hear what I was saying? Or you predicted it? Yeah, absolutely. So what you're basically saying there is you've got your low and you're drawing that out with an ascending triangle. Bit of a tip for everyone out there. Always take this section here. Don't take the back. Don't take here. Take this area and extrapolate that out. Now, I'm not going to do it like that because I think that for me, 520 is kind of what I'm looking at. And I don't like this enough because I'd rather it would have hit this trend line again one more time for me to call it this pattern. Otherwise, I'm just drawing it because it looks cool. The other thing that you want to see is you always want to see it break before the last third. So it really wants to do it now. We don't want to see it do it over here because then what happens is it just kind of patters out. That becomes crappy price action and bad momentum overall for the markets. Andrea says, question, you don't see the ABC. So I'm not going to, ABC corrective nature of this. So I don't look at that so much. I do look though, as if it went under the 410 area and it closed below, it would be also closing below this trend line. So that would cause further shorting down to at least the 360 zone where previous supports were. So for me, I'm looking heavily at that 410 zone as a close below signals. I don't think it cares about the 400 then. I think it would go further down to the 360. That's what I'd be looking at on Tesla. But for me, I'm still looking at the resistance for now. Few people saying Nasdaq is starting to roll over. Well, it's not really too much of a surprise that it's selling into the open. It hit that 12.2 and it's going to find some resistance. I don't think it wants to open above the 12.2. Let's load up the 15-minute here. We're at 11.50, so am I right in thinking that we should be open in 40-ish minutes? I believe that is right now. So 40 minutes we'll see the open. I expect it to be hovering around this zone. We'll see how the 15 minutes start to appear, but hovering around this 12.2 would make sense into the market open. Send me through a few big stocks. We can always look at those as well. No worries. Tesla on earnings hype will pop, says unexpected visit. Yep, that's the kind of thing that causes it. When you get into it, do your own analysis, guys. Do this. Go into Tesla. Look at how the market reacts 2 weeks out from earnings. It's retail traded. It trades like the market psychology of a retailer. When they hear about the earnings season and it starts to become, ooh, I wonder if I can get in and make some money. Hey, that's the time when we want to be getting in, don't we? We want to get in just before they do, just before everybody else gets on that train. All the YouTubers start creating videos, Tesla hype videos, Tesla's coming out, that kind of thing. Thanks very much for the subscriptions there, everybody. Thanks for joining the FX Evolution community. Really appreciate it. We've looked at silver. Is silver moving? Got a few comments there coming in. Yep, silver's declining here. That's good. Well, hopefully it comes back down to this 24.30 zone. Let's see if we can do that. Does that mean our dollar index is increasing a little bit? Do we have dollar index coming up? There we do. A little bit of bullish intention here from dollar index. Will we get to the 93.40? We'll be coming back to all these charts throughout tonight. Quickly talk about oil. A few people have said, oh, I don't like oil anymore, not interested in it. But oil still gives you technical trades, yeah? We're stuck here between a very large channel, 41.25 top end range, and we've got this 36 kind of 70 bottom end range. We're in the middle of that range right now. Remember, if we break a range like this, it extrapolates out as we're now in a channel. So it becomes like a 45.85 take profit at the top, and below we'd be looking at a $32. And what you want to do with whenever you have usually good patterns is you always want to check them by previous market structure. Do we have previous market structure around 32? Previous support over here? That's okay, not too bad. Do we have previous market structure around this 45.60? Well, let's put a horizontal line on it and have a look. I don't think we necessarily do. Let's have a look here. Not a super strong amount. So for me, it's not as good because of that. But when you're looking at patterns, check out and see whether the self-fulfilling prophecy of the pattern becomes another key market structure beforehand. Always good. So we'll take a couple of viewer and trading community member suggestions now. It looks like there's a few coming in. We want to look at this WKHS stock, Workhorse Group. I keep getting asked about this one. It's obviously popular right now. This is not the first time we've had this Workhorse Group in the community being asked for. So we've talked about it a few times. We've talked about how it did act technically before, and that's an important thing when you're looking at crazy stock like this that's gone up a lot. So it previously had resistance that did act as support. That's important. Then what we would have expected is when it broke out from here, it should have gone on to complete the high. It sold off early, so people obviously didn't have faith that in the company as much as we would think. It did sell off. Now, I'm not sure on the news on this particular stock, but from a TA perspective, it's just not that great. Like, I mean, we don't have a huge amount of market structure. We know it's probably trading off a lot of hype and anticipation. So for me, I basically find it very, very difficult to say, okay, this is a great technical level. We've got crazy volumes here coming in. I would think that there's $25 psychological support here. I would think that, of course, it's going to trade $5 increments. How is it traded? Something I do is maybe I just load up like $5 ranges. I just do this with stocks I don't understand yet and I haven't learnt them. Because what a real long-term trader will do is they get really good at analyzing 1 to 5 stocks. And then all they do is they trade those 5 stocks. They understand how they move. They understand the psychology of the people that trade them and invest in them. And that's all they're looking at. So for me, straight away, if we draw up these $5 increments, what do we notice? We notice that it doesn't seem to care too much about 25, but it did find resistance. It found support twice, didn't care about it again, and then did care about it. Okay, so 25 is clear. $30, resistances, clear. $20, twice resistance, a bit of an overshoot, and then it came back. And 15, lots of support through that zone. So I would just break it down in $5 increments. That's how I'd do it. Does that make some sense? I hope it does. Okay, so this is one from Dr. Horton. This is XLI, so it looks like it's industrials. This is a good idea, and you should always do your analysis here. I've actually got a bit of a sector chart. I'd love to show the community this sector chart. Tell me now, what do you think, as a community, which sector do you think is going to be the best for the next 6 months? Tell me which sector, whether it's technology, materials, which sector are you pinning your hopes and dreams on in the market? Let me know that while I bring this up. Yeah, we'll look at AMD. Yes, we will. Okay, so here's some sectors recently that have been happening. So we've obviously got the technology sector coming in strong the last couple of days. This is a 1 month chart of the sectors. So energy's pulled up. We talked about how there was rotation back into energy. It was the best performer last week. Then we had utilities, which has become very, very hot recently in terms of pickup. And we've got XLK, which is the tech sector. So this is for the last month what's happened. Overall, though, I'm pretty impressed with those moves. And it looks like some of the other ones are still lagging. So what you want to do as an analyst, like maybe you just don't like energy, fair enough. But going into these sectors and doing analysis on them is key to picking quality investments inside those sectors when they're not the flavor of the month, when they're not in the news and everyone isn't talking about them. So do your sector analysis. Doctor brings up a great point. Got a whole bunch of things coming in here. I'm expecting mostly tech. Let's see. Unexpected visit, energy. Cool. Thomas Love says gold sector. And Yojendra says 5G. Then we've got tech, energy, finance. Okay, I think it's interesting that, well, of course, tech is definitely a very easy one. Dr. Horton's got industrials. And I would think, what am I going with? Well, tech's the easy answer. Tech's the easy answer. The election changes the game, though, on sector. It really does. I'll give you my full analysis on that. In Australia, small cap, small mid cap, but that's what I'm going with. But yeah, industrials does make sense. This is a strong breakout, Horton. I like this a lot. So we've got a close here above the 80 range on XLI. Very, very strong. During a pullback, what do you expect? I think we will get a pullback in the markets at some point. So the market's going to come back and retest this resistance here at 80. We're going to have a 20 moving average there on the 4 hour. I quite like it, but overall it's looking pretty good. Let's have a quick look at a weekly here as well. Pretty strong break through 2 weeks. That's bullish as well. Obviously this matters. This zone of 80 matters for this sector. It looks like it wants to go back test this 85. And this is probably banking on Democratic win, I would think. That's a complete guess, but that is what it's banking on partially, this move. So very, very, very interesting. Nice kind of level here, Horton. I like it. Cool. Joseph says, anything to do with money, I'm in. Few people picking energy. Cool. Banks could do well as well. I think, we could see banks outperform more than you think. There's stats out there. Remember, stats from the GFC, the global financial crisis. What did we see outperform during the recovery phase of the market? We saw the banks recover very well in the first. So value actually recovered 3 to 6 months. Now, I know the market's weird right now, as in the tech sector's gone ballistic, but we are getting to points here where when we get through these key zones like 2660 on BAC, this is a clear area. Why is it the clear area there? I don't know. But there's clear body zones all the way along this particular stock. This is the Buffett stock. You know, BAC here gets through. We're going to go through a 50, already above a 20. We break through this 2660. I think there's a decent amount of momentum in this particular sector, at least up to the $30. So BAC could be a performer there for a few weeks. Always don't discount those kind of sections. Let's go back over here. We're 12 a.m. for my time. So that'll be 9 a.m. in New York. And we are about half an hour off from the open, I believe. We've got S&P 500 futures, 3520. Nasdaq now 12,160 on this particular index. Crude, Brent all up. VIX moving a little bit higher still. And overall, not too many pre-market moves coming into what is mostly about, of course, Apple today. Futures tanking, a few people are telling me. So there will be some moves here, it looks like. 12,155. So not a tank yet. We're still actually up on the Asian session trade. Let's go to the US 500. We'll also take a look at that Russell maybe a little bit later as well. So this one is down now, 0.37. All right, well, will we get that pullback to a key moving average? Which one is it going to be? Is it going to be a 4-hour? Are we going to get back to the 3,500 psychological zone? They'll meet each other around there. 3,500 makes sense in the S&P, doesn't it? Previous kind of little bit of support, psychological level, and a 20 will meet it. It'll kiss it at that point. That'll be where the market gets in. 3,500. So that could be the intraday low that we are seeing. You can put on things like pivots as well if you want to on these types of charts. Certainly worthwhile. Let's have a look at Amazon as well. We've got Prime Day here in Australia. I don't know if there's any other Australians joining me right now, but Prime Day sucked, in my opinion. There was nothing good. I couldn't even spend any money. Americans get all the best Prime Day deals. Australian Amazon's not so good. 2,900 is obviously been the very, very strong support here for Amazon. We're about to reach all-time highs into the height. 4.75 yesterday, still very, very far away from that 4-hour 20. Will it come back down? I still think, well, I think if the US market does drop, probably 20 moving average is going to be where you find support, wherever that may be. Probably around here, this 3,300. Could happen even today. That's a pretty big drop, maybe too much. So 3,400 psychological will find some buying pressure just because it is. And then maybe even further down if it really starts tanking. I'm still thinking we're in buy the rumor, sell the kind of fact processing here. Vitalik says, what happened to gold? What is going on? All right, let's have a look at gold here. City's profit fall 34%. That's pretty brutal. All right, so gold just got absolutely whacked. So is that because of more further dollar moves, or is it just moving in unison with the S&P? Okay, at this stage, we have got dollar index continuously bulling. That's putting on pressure here for gold. It's a bit more pressure than we'd hoped. Is silver getting back to that support line? Yeah, it is. For your golds, hopes, and dreams, we need this level to hold here for silver. Will it time in perfectly with the US dollar coming back to this 93.40? Everything matters around this zone. This previous support, you need it to hold. Jacob says, going to be a pretty violent pullback, in my opinion, ran up too fast. It certainly did run up too fast. Someone say AMD stock split. Someone say that? So AMD, a stock that is very, very interesting. Good announcements coming out. They could smoke Intel, potentially even have a competitor to NVIDIA, which will put pressure on NVIDIA's prices. If AMD, right now, I've got a 3080 ordered. I'm sure a lot of people do. That particular graphics card is hot. Everyone wants it. But overall, if we don't have the AMD competitor. If it can't compete with NVIDIA, I wouldn't be surprised to see NVIDIA run even more. At this stage, what will AMD do? They've got their announcements all coming in November, and I believe there might be even one at the end of this month. We've got releases. So very, very interesting there. From a technical perspective, we're not really in the middle. We're in the middle of nowhere. What do we do here? Can we buy AMD here? Not really. You're more wanting to buy it back down in these kind of 80 zones. I think this stock's moved a little bit too aggressively for its own good. I always look at the past history of AMD, and I remember this stock quite well, even understanding its previous kind of moves. It often moves up very heavily and then just gets absolutely busted after a big move. And this move is wild. It is very aggressive. They'll have to be taking a lot of market share, and they are. I wouldn't be surprised again, though, to see a 75 test before a proper move up from AMD. Again, for anyone that's just joining us, we've got 477 people here. Thank you very much for joining us. CBOE put call ratios getting low, getting down to this 0.6 area. This is giving us the reading that there could be a bit of bearish intent in the markets. The Wall Street has flushed out all the bears. They've destroyed all their puts. And now it might be time to put a little bit of pressure on. We had a 1.22 reading. That is the lowest reading that we've had on put call ratios for a long while. We haven't had a 1.22 recently. And that was yesterday. Now, it makes sense it's going to be lower. Sorry, that was October 12th. So that was lower than most days. But of course, that was also on a weird day, being the Columbus Day of trade. Go back over to the questions here. What have we got going on? Tom, could you look at Boeing coming into support? Yeah, I think Boeing's worthwhile taking a look at. I haven't been in this stock. I've been in it relative, like just through indirectly, but I haven't actually traded Boeing. Well, I never do, but I just don't like airplane stocks very much. But this particular stock, it's just been hovering, hasn't it? It's been doing very, very poorly. So let's go to the 4 hour here. What can we see? Well, actually go to the weekly first. So the weekly is doing nothing. It doesn't really excite me either way. We've got some pull up off that 144. We're trading in this 167. Go down to a daily. We want to have a look at the ranges. You probably want to start drawing up your support resistance. So there's probably some support around 160, and there's obviously some resistance around 170. It looks like Boeing, maybe the $10 price ranges is where you want to look at. You probably want to put some indicators on here as well. But for me, I'd be looking for volume accumulation. I'd be looking at previous structure. Looks like it could get through quite a lot of these zones. I mean, I'm not really interested in Boeing until it gets above 200 again and things look better for it. Last time it faked out, but a lot of stocks were doing this. The bank stocks did this. Heaps of stocks had that aggressive pickup and then, of course, came back down to earth. So for me, I'm just going to probably set a long-term alert at 200. We need to remember, Boeing can easily, once it bounces and gets through this zone, big bulls will come in. Once we get through a 200 handle, all of a sudden big bulls are going to come into things like 300 handle or possibly even more. So that's a very, very key zone there. Previous supports. Now, will it get there anytime soon? No way. But I don't like this kind of thing. I like to see market structure before it comes out. Let's have a look at Intel, INTC. This is the kind of thing that we want to see. Oh, it's beautiful. It's doing even better than I thought. This was a great find the other day. We basically had trapped Intel into a range. We consider these like a fake out move. And we also knew that there was this 52. And if it got through that area, it was going to try to move higher towards, again, similar to the Boeing trade there, 57.50. 57.50, previous resistance. And of course, that's the area that this Intel trade is going to go for now. We're almost to get the 2050 cross. Yeah, we can absolutely look at Bitcoin. We certainly will. Absolutely. We should do that right now. But this particular Intel, very, very nice breakout, guys. 52.50 break was beautiful. We closed above, oh, my favorite. let me just talk about this. I talk about this quite a lot. It's one of my favorites. This candle here getting rejected and closed above. This is traditionally a retail sell signal. When you see the market close above this zone, that is a super buy signal. It's trapping short sellers. It's trapping the retail herd. And when you get above that, it's a beautiful thing. It really is very, very nice. Always, when you're seeing this recently, I've noticed since the crisis, it's become a way bigger trap zone. We also had it here on US 100. We had a weekly close above. Look at that bullish intention, just smashing all the solds. We had a big rejection here. The wick closed above, boom, straight through. And that is what happens. Very, very aggressive moves. So we're sitting here about 20 minutes, 19 minutes until open. We've got quite a few decent moves coming through in terms of a little bit of selling pressure. We'll go down to the smaller time frames. We'll be comparing, of course, the Nasdaq and the US 500, the S&P, into the open with each other. Trading at a 12,139 now for Nasdaq, coming off that 12.2 resistance. Got through a little bit on the futures, but 12.2 is acting as resistance. Seems to be a story of probably dollar index right now. Dollar index, VIX starting to increase as well at a 25.87 handle. That's interesting. Straight off our support, we mentioned VIX, even through the bullish aggression, has not gotten below our support line of 25 on the CBOE contract. Let's do the Bitcoin. We like all the markets. We like the Bitcoin. We like it all. So Bitcoin coming back down to heavy support at 11.4. We had this trapped symmetrically in the videos last week. We talked about the close, some nice little trade kind of consolidation breakouts going on through it. It hit the first level of resistance, being that 11.7 area. That was our technical take profit. We take 2/3 of the way through. That was our technical take profit. I called 12K. I think that it can go to 12K. During this sell-off, previous resistances at 11.4, we'd hope that this acts as some form of support. Now, what we want to do is you don't usually just want to buy randomly support. You could do it, but this zone here is where we expect further buying pressure. It's already done it once. So to me, what that's telling me is the market wants to test a little bit lower, and probably what we're going to need to see is comes down and gives us some form of lightning bolt on a smaller time frame. We're on the 2 hour here. So some form of lightning bolt would be ideal before it continues on. And then 12,000 is the obvious choice, just because Bitcoin loves its 500s and loves its thousands. But it has hit what you would think the symmetrical triangle was going to play out. Just shows you the technicals play out very, very well on Bitcoin right now. A few questions coming in about the Dow. We've got here from Nickel. He said, Tom, what do you think about the Dow? Will it end up opening and up for the day? I'm not sure about up for the day, but it is back down on support pre-open. Previously, it's been testing this 2 hour 20 here and finding some levels of support. So will the market just start bulling straight away? If it holds here into the open, then that's what we're probably thinking. But overall, I think the Dow is still weaker than the other two indices. It's been looking relatively good. I think they're all due for a pullback because of the aggressive move on Monday and Friday. And we will be getting a pullback most likely into the fibs. So we'll draw up some fibs now. We'll put our comparison charts on as well. Get on our US 500 here on the left. Get our US 100 here on the right. Bring them down to 15, or probably 1 hour is fine. And we'll just have a look at those. So we'll load this up just to a 4 hour, just to show how far away it is from the 20 moving average. This is the Nasdaq. I'm going to put the fib retracement tool on this one. So I'm going to put the fib on from the high here. And you'd rather do the fib pullbacks on things like, of course, not the futures trade, but the real market themselves. But the 38.2 sitting right where the 20 is, that's about 11.862. So at this stage, I would think that it finds some support if it keeps coming down at 12,000, and then some support at around that 11,800 between the 38.2 and the 50 fib, where we usually get that market going on. Whole bunch of other great questions coming in. I'm just going to get some water leading into the next 15 minutes, the exciting time of the market. I've got some music for everybody as well, so that'll be good. Stick with us. We'll be back in only just a couple of minutes.
Alrighty then.
All right, we're back. Hopefully everyone doesn't mind those background tunes. Thank you for sticking with us. Adil Musa, welcome to the trading community, mate. Welcome to the TC crew. Thank you very much for joining up while we're on hold. Maybe I should go and hold a little bit more. Thank you very much, mate. Appreciate that. So we'll leave this one just kind of chilling in the background a little bit into the open. I think it sets the tone. A bit chill this morning, ready for this Apple news. Ready to see how the market reacts to that. Let's go over to some pre-market moves coming in here. We'll use the Webull pre-market setup that we've got kind of set up before. I'm going to actually move here. I don't want none of this 28 billion and below. We want to get higher and bigger companies. Let's go to 35 billion and above. Pre-market move in. Looks like big moves are Micron Tech, Apple, 1% up. Was up a lot more when we started this session. It was up about 1.5, 1.6. Maybe a few people are buying the rumor, selling the fact, getting out in the pre-market session with their futures contracts. PayPal, another favorite, is always up. AMD now only up 0.49. So the markets have definitely started pulling down. Vail, interestingly here, down 2%. Vail down. Barrick Gold down 1%. We might check that out. Might write down a few of these into the market open. We've got Barrick Gold down. Let's have a look at how that's performed after the Buffett hype. And we'll also be taking a look, I think, at Vail, just because I'm always interested in Vail. It does interest me over the longer term. Coca-Cola as well down a little bit there. Go over to questions that have been asked. Jacob says, must have said something about buying Spotify. Yeah, I was using Spotify there. Don't actually buy Spotify. Yeah, absolutely, mate. Latif Mister says, please play song Eyes on the Price. The question is that copyrighted? YouTube is a dangerous place for any content creator out there, unfortunately. Get copyright, you get slapped, you get no dollars. Not that you get much anyway. I'll actually release that one day. I'll release how much we've earned. I want to, start investing it and showing the community how you can do dollar cost averaging. But it's a shocker. It's a shocker. I think I'm getting about $5 a video nowadays. $5 to $10 per 10K views. That is wildly low. Okay, questions coming in here. Let's see what people are thinking. We are 10 minutes off the open. Gold coming under further pressure, a few people are saying. Let's have a look at the VIX here. VIX is continuously spiking, 25.7. Obviously, the market's kind of just hovering around that zone. We'll be looking at the pre-market lows here as a signal of further selling into the 50, into the 3,500 zone. So Asian session lows, Asian European session, 1 hour US 500, 35.20, key level. We'll put a little horizontal line there into the market open. And we probably want to also test that 35.40 as a resistance high. And I'm going to do that because that was the last couple of hours of trade. I'll ignore this because that was hype train. But over here, we're going to trap the market within these zones. And that's something we're going to be looking at in the smaller time frames. Latif says, oi Tom, do you think ETH will be touching 485, 489 US dollar in the same time as Bitcoin hits 12K? Yeah, that would move in unison. So, yep, that would be the kind of play that would look there. They all move. It's like the major, yeah. If Bitcoin's moving in a certain direction, they all just move with it, and then some will move more aggressively than others. So have a look at that dollar index. I want to see what it's doing coming into the market open the most. So we'll load up DXY when eventually this chart comes through. DXY. DXY. You know what surprises me always? Guess what company? I want the chat community, tell me. The company I always bag on. Whoa, DXY, very strong. Well, that will not be good for gold right now. DXY into the 93.40 handle into the market open. Wow. Tell me what company just came out with sell the dollar alert. I'd love you to answer this one. Let's see if anyone guesses it. So this is an investment company that likes making calls in the newspapers, and then you almost always do the opposite of what they say initially. Cam says, I've made a few hundred with my channel and I'm a really small channel at the moment. Yeah, you can definitely make a couple of bucks, man. But it's not like obscene. Right now, I don't know what happened. The last month's been horrible, really bad. But it doesn't really matter. It's not my main thing. Yes, the community knows. I like Jody's one though. Motley Fool. It's not that one. But yeah, Matthew, everyone's gotten it right. Buzzbloods, you make my day. Hot copper. Jim Cramer, yeah. Goldman Snacks, as somebody says there. Yeah, absolutely. Goldman Sachs comes out with a call. If you search it in Google, Goldman says short dollar, and what's the dollar do? It goes bullish. So 93.40, this is a critical point that we're reaching here. We took that little range before the market. We said that maybe the dollar can get up to this little range here, and we want to see it find resistance right now. There should be selling pressure coming into this market. We're only 6 minutes off the open, and the dollar's going mental. Look at it go. Look at that 5-minute chart. Makes it look a lot more extreme, but we just hit the resistance, and look at that little bit of selling coming in. Goldman Snacks. I like that one a lot. Copper. A few people were mentioning Buzzbloods. What's happening with copper? Not too much move here on copper. Just doing its thing. So VIX coming in, still up a little bit. Probably dollar is the most interesting move of the day. If it breaks through that 93.40 and continues to go high, that really is signaling pressure that's going to come on. This is where we should see silver synergizing. In fact, I want to load dollar index. I'm going to load that next to silver right now. And we're going to load that silver. just hit that 24.30 handle. So it's hit the right zone. I'm going to watch this throughout the session. So here's the zone. Never, and I repeat this, you do not want to buy a falling knife in these areas, because when you do that, you make mistakes. Wait for the market to stabilize. Wait for the lightning bolt. Wait for the accumulation. Do not buy the falling knife. It's a big mistake there. So here we've got it on the right and the left. I'm going to load both of those up. I assume gold's getting pummeled here. Gold probably under 1900 easily now. Oh, right on 1900. So right on that support of the psychological. You probably pretty much need to see it hold this level here. Gold must hold here. And that will be very interesting. 5 minutes off the open. What are we seeing coming into the pre-market? Obviously, two indices showing some weakness, but not an extreme amount. Dollar moving probably the most, and that putting pressure on quite a few key kind of crosses as well. I think you'll have pound US dollar also setting up all around the place. Dow keeps going down, says Jacob. SPX going down, Nasdaq partially up. Well, Nasdaq still got that hype train of Apple. What is Apple doing into the market open? Still holding up probably about a 1%. Amazon also holding up decently as well. So AAPL still holding a 1% handle coming into the announcement. Remember, will we see that buy the rumor, sell the fact disappointment kind of from Apple? Will it reach 130 psychological resistance before it comes down? That's the story of today. But certainly yesterday's move shows the retail crowd is well and firmly in this thing for the hype train, for the annoyance. Buzzblad says, "Oh, the scars, the falling knife." Yes, we've all been hit by that one, unfortunately. So 3 minutes off from the open. This is usually the time where we start focusing in on these indices. We start trapping up price. We don't clearly have a massive kind of channeling range here for the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq just really, it's all about the 12.2. Kind of seems like we'll hit the 12.2 on the open and then it will make its direction. I think the US 500 Asian into European trading session has been more interesting. We've got nice little body resistance at this 35.40, and then we've got this 35.20 zone, and the market's been trapped between those two areas. I'm going to leave that up there on the left-hand side. So 3 minutes coming in. Let's get some predictions from the community right now. Down or up today? Are we going to close down or up? I'm going to guess that most people are going to say one way. Let's go with Nasdaq. Down or up today, considering the news events. Will we see down or up? Let me know in the chat comments. Sandola77 coming in with the $4 for the cup of coffee. Thank you very much, Sandola. Appreciate your support every time on the stream. Really do. So 2 minutes off. Getting pretty close in here. Pretty sure I'm right and daylight savings isn't hurting me. Just quickly checking. $9.28 in New York. Down. Few people up. Nasdaq up. All right. So down, then up towards closing. All right. That's from Kartik. So it seems like most people, actually, there's a bit of this is a mixture crowd. If we had a straw poll or something on this, we'd be looking at a fully fledged, potentially down through the middle. And that's interesting. Agus says up, down, up. I always pick wrong, says Marlene. All right, well, let's have a look. What'd you say, Marlene? I want you need to pick for the community here. If you always pick wrong, you need to pick for the community so we know which way we shouldn't be going. Hemivol says, if you check the SP 500 weekly resistance since 2009, we have had resistance at that for a very long time. Last time SP went down, it hit that resistance. And if we're right now hitting, I'm not sure what you're talking about, but basically if you're drawing a line through a whole bunch of different prices, I'm not sure I'd use it, Hemivol, but you can definitely send the image of what you're talking about to support at FX Evolution or Thomas at FX Evolution. I'll take a look at it for sure. If I think it's very valid, I'll certainly use it. Meowdy says, oh crap, we're open. All right, let's quickly play our bell. We got caught up in the chat there. We've got our bell to blind everyone's ears. There we go. Very nice. And we're open and we're off. So we're basically come in here. Looks like the Nasdaq, a little bit of shorting coming into the open. The first 5 to 15 minutes are what's going to matter for retail sentiment. Remember, the first hour of the markets is mostly retail traders. It's not so much necessarily the big traders. They really come in at the end of the day and they push the direction of the close of the candle, the most important part. Always the most important part. So Marlene says down, guys. So supposedly, Marlene says she's always wrong. We'll see. Everyone buy the dip, says Jane777. Obviously not financial advice there, Jane, I hope. Buy the dip, says Emben. SPY 360. Yeah, so we're talking about today possibly getting downwards as low as a 3,500 handle and finding some support there. That's what we're thinking could happen. Thank you very much, Doctor, for all of the bells coming in. S&P 500 looking good. So it isn't like a super aggressive first minute that we have seen in other sessions. We didn't hear the bell. Oh, I'm not even sure why that happened. I certainly played it. Must have had a little bit lower than normal. Rogue Trade says circuit breaker day. I don't think so, Rogue Trade. For anyone that doesn't know what a circuit breaker is, usually the indice will hit 7%. It'll go into a 15-minute trade halt, and then it will come out and trade again. I hadn't actually seen many circuit breakers ever in my trading career until this year. And when I saw so many of them, it was funny. It was crazy. It was an exciting time of serious fear in the markets. So Nasdaq now coming in, it's shorting off decently, when I say decently for a 1 minute trade here, and it started to pick up a little bit of momentum. Let's see if that momentum can carry through. Got a 12,000, 50, 60 kind of support. That's all we can really look at here. It's really the only zone or area. That's the kind of point that we need to see the market close below, at least on a 15-minute time frame, to show further weakness down to try to test higher time frame moving averages. Buzzblads, welcome to the TC Crew trading community, mate. Thank you very much for joining. You've now got access to a bunch of emojis. We'll certainly be adding to those and improving it. I've got a few ideas. I've just got to get the art back on it. By the way, if anyone is an established or very good artist out there and wants to help me out with a little bit of work for a few things that I want to do for the community, I wouldn't mind making a coffee cup and a few other things. Hit me up at Thomas, Thomas, at fxevolution.com. Always interested in supporting some quality artists out there if there is one in the trades. Major sell-off in Apple, I've been told. So let's have a look around the markets. Let's do our quick reset here in terms of percentage changes. Let's take a look at what's going on. Do we have a major sell-off in Apple? Well, we certainly do have a sell-off in Apple. The buy the rumor, sell the fact begins again. Almost like clockwork. Man, I cannot believe how easy these markets are for these type of events. It's just insane. Hype into Tesla, de-hype, hype into something else, de-hype. There's a lot of new people and trading the markets around. Very, very crazy. Micron Tech, probably the standout, it looks like here for the day. And the rest of them, all up not too much. AMD is holding its kind of gains. 2.78 from ABEV. Barrick Gold coming in at 2.4 down. That makes sense. Of course, we have seen gold fall in futures trade. And HSBC, BP, Vail not doing so well. Apple still 1.49. All right, that should be hitting this Nasdaq up. All right, we're only got 5 minutes. We're not even 5 minutes in, and we're already starting to put pressure on 12,050. Can we get down there? 12.1 just got hit, bought up a little bit. S&P hovering in the middle of the zone. Buzzblood says, see the up down saw. Shorting net, says Agus. Cat Z says, I know nothing about stocks. Well, it's certainly worthwhile learning a little bit about them, Cat. It's definitely a lifelong skill that can help you out. Even if you don't want to know that much, still understanding dollar cost averaging, some of the basic indexes, that kind of thing, always worthwhile. Hemivol says, Thomas, I sent you some mail. I'll check that on my phone in a few minutes, Hemivol, and take a look at that. Siddharth says, told you that AAPL had a worm in it. Well, it certainly has a few things. So to recap why we think that Apple may have some selling pressure in it. Well, firstly, Apple event, 3 hours, 23 minutes. Now, for anyone that watched those old school Apple events when we used to have Steve Jobs coming in, the black shirt, the jeans, the hype train, and then what he used to say, like, and then there's something more. They were super exciting times. I used to get really hyped for the events back then. But nowadays, it's really just more, what products are they bringing? Do they have supply chain problems? We don't know. The market will expect more than just the iPhone and 5G and 6 different models or whatever they're going to do. They want to see other innovation, other products. I'm not sure they're going to come with that. It seems like they're struggling. They've got a few things coming later in the pipeline, and that AirTags and other little things they were meant to bring out not coming through. So that's why we're thinking Apple may just fail to, meet the expectations of the market overall. Here we have the put-call ratio. It's still very low. Remember, this is a key metric that we use kind of as a contradictory method to the market going up. Often the put-call ratio getting really low spurns selling pressure. It is very low with a 1.22 SPX yesterday on it. VIX, I think, is worthwhile taking another look at now as well. What is the VIX doing? So VIX just hovering around in the market open. Go over to the dollar index and silver, and we'll have a look at that as well. So silver really still around that previous resistance, acting as support. Can it hold? We're not sure. And dollar index, is it finding resistance yet? It should be. So it's bounced to almost our little bit of take area. And now we have to hope that if we're going to see this turn around, it needs to do so right now. This area here is where we need to see dollar index moving over. But if it just continues to bull and just goes straight through other reasons and just huge amounts of volume, that does not bode well for the US 500. Yep, we'll look at some Nasdaq predictions and other things. Somebody mentioned before 200 moving average. And yes, we've got these green lines here, the 200 moving averages, but they brought up a great point, and that was the 200. The reason we use a 200 simple moving average is because it's heavily used in the industry. Now, on the daily, what is one of the major scans that a lot of brokers use and a lot of investors use? Is the price above the 200 or below the 200? If price is above the 200, then they look at buys. If it's below, they don't look at buys. So 200 moving averages do mean quite a lot. Island, I love this one. Too funny. Expectations were too high for Apple. They also want an electric car. For anyone that's been trading EVs, certainly it's been a pretty crazy time. Maudi's going back to some serious moves here. Back at the 2000 and 2008 bullish moves and then big dips. Yeah, that's probably a little bit different, I think, than now. The market was waiting for supports, but anything can happen. But 2000 in particular, it's a totally different bubble situation. I think drawing conclusions to companies that had no earnings and was literally insanity is a little bit different right now. But I agree with you, there could be further pullback ramifications. Here we go. We're coming in to test this Nasdaq, this 12,050 support getting tested. So that 12.2, which is where we really thought resistance was going to be, seems to be acting like it is. Now, let's have some predictions here on what's going to happen. We'll go over to the big screen and we'll start loading up some indices and some key major stocks. Dollar index unstoppable, says A14266. It's another reason why we always wait for a smaller time frame change of trend confirmation at our key levels. Few people seem to be shorting Apple, so it's definitely pulling off now, 1.9% down. That's pretty significant. Let's go to the 4-hour here on Apple and just quickly talk about it. So from a price action standpoint, where is the previous resistances? Well, we have resistances and support. I think the 120 handle, just because it's a double zero and it's going to be around where that 20 moving average is. Like here with the line 119.47, the 120 should be holding up some Apple buying pressure. Previous resistance will act as support. We've got a 20 moving average and it did go too fast, too quick. So if we do continuously see sell off, maybe it goes to that 119, 120 zone and starts to find buying pressure. And what you can look for there is you can look for, again, lightning bolts. You can look for smaller time frame accumulation, all those types of things. Buzzblad says the 14, I assume you're talking about moving averages here, Blads, was the king of the pit, but we have evolved. Has anyone ever watched that weird YouTube video that's about pit traders from back in the 80s and 90s? And they all like snort cocaine, and you can tell they snorted cocaine because their noses were all like messed up. Those guys were crazy. Like I remember watching that back in 2010 or something, and they couldn't trade anymore. Literally none of them could make money anymore because the pit psychology and the way they manipulated the market back then, at least from a human psychology standpoint, the computers and the way it is now is different for them. They just couldn't do it anymore. So we just put pressure on that 12,050. We bought off 20 points. Well, pressure's coming back in. So this is a pretty exciting first 10 minutes coming into the market here. We are seeing a little bit more selling pressure. We'll go over to a few stocks. I did want to look at gold, the stock itself, and obviously gold in terms of, this is a pretty decent sell-off now, isn't it? That dollar index is unstoppable. I would have thought that it would have held a little bit better here when it got above that 1920, but it's straight away rejected. Dollar index is just killing it. And gold seems to also do pretty poorly when the market is actually selling off as well. So this is a bit of a surprise move here from gold. If we go to Barrick, how is Barrick going? So another case of when markets hype off, let's say the Buffett. So where'd Buffett buy it? He buy it here? Must have bought it here. So Buffett bought it in this zone. This is where it got disclosed, if I remember rightly. Somewhere in these areas he's buying it. Then it goes hyperactive, and it often does this, and then it comes back down. So for Barrick, 26 is a clear level of support, as is the 27. These two $1 ranges, but there is support here at 26. So it just shows you, again, don't necessarily follow, Buffett. If you want to do that, as soon as it gets disclosed, it goes up, and then it sells off that range. Generally, it doesn't hold the hype nowadays. I've noticed that with the last 4 or 5 Buffett filings. YouTube's all over it. Everyone's making videos. Hey, it's all good. And then bang, it's not so good anymore. Siddharth says, but Goldman said sell dollar. Well, that obviously, as we said before, Siddharth is our go-to. Don't do that. So we do expect buying pressure at this 12,056 kind of 55 area for the Nasdaq. S&P now picking up a little bit. Very interesting. Send through a couple of stocks that you're looking at. We'll cover those now. Todd says, hi Tom, thanks for the stream. Keep up the work. Todd, man, you should be asleep. I know you in real life, bro. And it's late, dude. It's about 3 a.m. for you, so you're crazy. But thank you very much for coming to the stream. Appreciate it. Iron says, mate, it's almost 1 a.m. in the East Coast. Go get some rest. Unless you're in Perth. No, I'm in Melbourne. Absolutely, Iron. But it's okay. It's okay. We're prepped. We're prepped to do the stream. We're doing it for the community because it's not really too bad when we're doing it once a week. ARK. Riot stock. Has Riot got stock now? I thought Riot was owned by, was it Tencent or something? If we're talking about that one, or we're talking about something else. Yeah, ARK's always an interesting one. The ARK ticker, if anyone's looked at the investments that they're making, obviously she invests heavily in, disruptive sectors. That's really the most popular one. Oh, I know one that we haven't checked for a while. I'm just going to do it anyway because I want to take a look at it. McDonald's, one of my favorites. How are we going there with McDonald's? So McDonald's has held very well in all this kind of crisis period. Why is that? The market we were talking about heavily over here. I think anyone that's been following the channel knows I've been crapping on about it for a while. And why do I do that? Because this is like that indestructible force in high unemployment environments. McDonald's does well. It was the only stock, interesting fact, during the GFC to end positive. It was positive in the GFC because what happens is, unfortunately, people get sad, they're depressed, unemployed, and they often do go and buy McDonald's, and it leads to higher profits. I don't think there's any necessarily great levels here, but do remember, this is the reason why this stock is rotated into and doing quite well. And someone said Domino's before, and it's a pretty similar case. It didn't do as well, though, during the GFC as McDonald's did. So here we've got DPZ in terms of the way it's traded, Domino's Pizza. It's been very, very bullish. It had that massive breakout off earnings, then came back down, retested the previous resistance as support. It's really just hovering over that 20. It's basically on the buy area now, isn't it? In terms of what it's come back to. 20 has touched once, twice, 3 times, and this is supporting zone. So that's the kind of way I would be looking at it. There's not much structure other than it's held this 20 on the way through. Thanks very much for the subscription there. Appreciate that. A few people want to look at Baba. We certainly will look at that. Why not? So Baba, another great break technically a little while ago. We covered that on the channel. Covered the one over here. Cardboard pizza. Yeah, I don't eat Domino's either, but that's the way it seems to work. So it had a very nice little breakout from the 280, just kind of went straight slingshot through. Now we're above the 300 range. So we'd expect that the market will definitely want to come back down from the resistance and test at least 300. I don't know if I love it at these prices, but that's the way this tech stock kind of is trading. I did love this buy zone quite a lot off the previous multiple resistance area. That was nice. But yeah, 300 will act as buying support from the top side down. So when it comes through, 300 will always be a strong psychological previous resistance that we'll be buying there, and possibly even a spike down to the 20. That's what I'd be looking at. Not too much great value there in Baba though, from a pullback perspective. MCD and waistlines went up, Siddharth says. Yeah, it's pretty much any of that obesity. A lot of people I know in the industry, they were tracking like obesity indexes and stuff. It's a pretty mean industry, but that's the way it is. A few people saying the VIX is moving up a little bit. JP Morgan and Citi beat earnings estimates, says Dave G. So we heard before someone said some terrible figure about Citi. Expectations are they're going to do pretty bad. So that's why. Further support for the banks would be important. So we're about to make a new little high here. Let's go down the 15-minute on the VIX. The fear index is coming in and it's starting to move up. So we've now got, this is interesting, so 25, or 26 basically, the resistance zone could be now broken and closed above on the 15-minute. And that might start some further fear coming into this market up to the 2650. So VIX is sparking off our base. I'm really happy the base held. That was cool to see. Great little technical holding there. Go back over to the markets. What are we seeing now? Held the 12,050, tested it just before, bounced off it. Probably a good scalp off that zone, really. But you wouldn't want to go, oh, I think it's going back up here straight away. I think there could be further selling pressure coming in. We've seen wild rides in the first half an hour to 1 hour of trade when the retail market is all over the place. Reese says oil and Exxon. Yeah, we have been looking at Exxon a little bit there, Reese. Star says, never rest your hopes on stocks that depend on government contracts coming to fruition. Yeah, government contracts. I think I usually rest my beliefs more on tax cuts and tax strategies and spending pipelines. When a government commits to doing something, generally they don't want to back out because it shows weakness to the voting public. They don't want to show that. So I usually go with that one. Multi-year kind of approach there. Max says, McDonald's is one of the only restaurants that will stand open with this COVID thing. Yeah, absolutely. It's either a Big Mac or a Goldman snack. I like that one. So let's see if we get further pressure on this 12,055. Back round to the markets. Let's take a look at pre-changes here. Anything else that's interesting into the pre-market prep? Well, not too much. Again, we have mostly the same kind of downs. Is Apple still down relatively hard? I think so. 1.55 still down. That's a 3% switch plus since we started streaming only a few hours ago. So that's a 3% plus switch that we have had. Thanks very much for the support as well tonight, everybody. Really awesome to get well over 500 during our peak. Thanks very much for subscribing, liking, supporting the channel. I do appreciate each and every one of you out there. It's just amazing that we've got such great numbers to these streaming events. If you want to provide me feedback as well, please do, in terms of things that we can improve upon. In fact, I'd like to ask the chat right now, what would you like to improve upon for these sessions? Do you want me to have more of a screener on the screen when we go live? What do you think will help improve the sessions overall? I'd love to have feedback on that. MSDES says, Tom, could you have a look at Intel? It's broken upwards of its channel. Yeah, we did look at that before. I can say it looks good, and it certainly looks good up until the resistance. Just having a look at an email here I got sent here from Hemivol, and he sent some pictures. So this is interesting. So yeah, I totally agree with your top end resistance there, Hemivol, that you sent me. I'll show the community that in a second. And well, I'd probably just draw. I wouldn't draw it all the way from the bottom, but yeah, I'll show everybody what you sent me so we can talk about that. Go over here and load up another chart. Okay, so we use SPX. Now remember, if you're doing analysis, try to use SPX whenever possible and use that because it's the real close. So most people are probably familiar with this. I know a few other people on YouTube are always going on about this one, and fair enough. Oh, stupid magnetic thing, I need to turn that off here. All right. So basically, there's clearly a trend line that's gone on here for multiple years. Now, some people say it goes all the way from the bottom and they draw it out from the bottom down here and draw it all the way through. When you're drawing trend lines, what I like to do is just draw where it isn't broken or interrupted by too much. You don't want to see interruption. Notice how the body close here on the weekly SPX it never got outside of this trend line. So we actually just hit that. We just reached that level where the trend line's basically saying, hey, we're starting to slow down a little bit here in terms of new highs, and we've gone a little bit too much here. So we've just hit the resistance and we've found shorting pressure. This is the one that quite a few people are looking at. And I think that's fair. And I think this is certainly one that's such a clear zone that around these areas it's worthwhile drawing. So we've just hit this multi-year level resistance. And this is the one I thought you meant, Hemivol. I wasn't sure when you said drawing through supports. And I think that's because you were basically drawing all the way from the low. So if you extrapolate this out, it goes bang, 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 through these two and through to there. I don't like using that part, but I'll certainly use this part. So it hits that resistance and it's shorting off that zone. This is critical. You know, if we get above this, I mean, what's open for us? Well, it's gotten above a very, very key point. So it'll do something like this, break high, come back, And this previous resistance trend line is worthwhile having on your charts, everyone, because when that happens, it'll act as dynamic support. It'll act as a level of support from the top down if that does end up occurring. So this is make it or break it in terms of this trend line right now for the markets. Ali says, need more live streams. I think showing your face would be more engaging. Yeah, I probably will do that soon. I'll get all that stuff sorted outside of this ridiculous lockdown that we've got. Can we analyze oil stocks? We'll have a look at one of those before we finish up. Absolutely. Why is the Nasdaq dropping like this from LiQWYD? Well, the reason the Nasdaq's dropping like this because it moved too fast, too hard, too quickly, and two of them, specifically Amazon and Apple, are hyping into facts. Intermittent screener says $10. Absolutely. I could definitely put something like that in there. A few people wanting louder, more Forex. Yeah, I love Forex. I just don't. The problem is if I make Forex content, a lot of people don't like it. So I know I've got a strong Forex base in our private Discord community, and I try to support that there. But in terms of this, yeah, screener for buy opportunity would be nice. Yeah, I think that's fine. We can definitely do a screener, and then we could do like a stock of the day, really break into it. I'll have to ban you there, Kinder Canal. Sorry, buddy. How do I ban you? You can't be posting that kind of stuff, man. There we go. I'll put you in timeout for now. There we go. I need to get a few more mods as well. So this is the resistance from the top end side that you're looking at, and that is always key. Let's go back over to these markets. Still seeing the supports hold. I'd still leave these on your charts for today. You can see that they both were really great levels. And this is the thing with TA. When you realize that all of this in between these zones is noise, you're going to get buy zone here, you're going to get sell zone here, and if it breaks either way, it becomes the opportunity, doesn't it? So to really think about what could happen today or what may happen overall is we're thinking that the market is due for a bit of a pullback down to some form of normalization moving average. Overall, the way that I'm looking at it is pretty much fib retracements. I'm taking the move itself, probably the SPX move would be the better one, and I'm thinking this resistance up here, it pulls back, hits maybe a 38.2 pullback, a 20 moving average here on a 4 hour. It could all happen today. Remember, this is not that wild. It's just taking off what it put on yesterday. And this area here would be the pullback zone. Otherwise, it must hold here and go bullish. And if it goes here and goes bullish and closes above this 12,000 zone here, back to 12.4 highs, resistance, S&P will go and hit, of course, 3,600 or just below. And then both of those zones will act as resistance and we will have further pullbacks. So either way, we're going to get a pullback. We're not going to just see a vertical shoot off, I don't think. But it either happens right now and it gets below this zone and then further pressure of selling comes in down to these 38.2 levels, or we bull off this area, break to a new high, and then, of course, go on to basically test previous resistance highs. I think both of those scenarios make a lot of sense, and then everything in this area is just noise. So we're either looking for a break high or a break low, and then we have our zones very clearly stated. TK says, hi Tom, I am from Toronto, Canada. Welcome TK. Found your live stream today. Great content. How often are you on? Keep up the great work. Your numbers will go way up. We've been doing it for a little while now, man. So we do Monday generally every single week. This week we're doing Tuesday just because I thought yesterday might be a bit boring. It turned out to be a crazy tech day. And we do one live stream, any special events. We're doing an election live stream. And of course, we produce a whole bunch of content. Every single day of the week. Rogue Trader says, Forex is wrecked city for amateurs. Yep, you get destroyed if you're an amateur in Forex. I can agree with that. Best thing for Forex is always going to be swing trading. Swing trading is very good in Forex, but 15, 5 minute, 1 minute scalping charts can be absolutely deadly. Any suggestions for long-term investment from Ivanka Knowles? Look, Ivanka, I think that I can't make any long-term suggestions. I mean, obviously I can use other people's approaches like Buffett, and he says indices. I think that the thing is dollar cost averaging is really a good thing that does work. You obviously need to make your own decisions, but the most important thing with any investment you make, and this comes from experience, have confidence in what you're doing. Have confidence in your plan or strategy. The reason why people get so rich on property is because they're super confident about it. They hold it. In fact, it's hard for them to sell it. So they have to hold it. And therefore, that ability to hold it through the times that are tough and the times that are good means that they do make money. They're also taking loans as well, which makes it easy. But yeah, confidence is key to long-term investors. Susanna says, me too, from Toronto, Canada. You are the best. Thank you very much. No worries. Doctor says he does live streams. Yeah, I do live streams when Jerome, the money printer, pal, speaks. I try to. Yeah, especially when he speaks at a time that is insane for me. Crypto trade live stream. Yeah, we could do something like that. I want to do a whole bunch of special events, so we can do a lot of those. It looks like we're probably approaching the first half an hour. We're not breaking through either of the supports, so the excitement is not really there right now. Usually, in my experience doing these live streams, about an hour to an hour and a half in, we'll get a bit more interest. I don't think this particular level is going to get broken in the next 10 minutes though. So basically, because it's 1 a.m., what I might do is I might call it quits. We've had the support getting touched and closed against. For the day, things that I'm looking at, still the fib pullback overall for the markets. A new break to a new high, I think it signals clearly going and testing the previous resistance levels of 12.4, or on the S&P 500, the 35 kind of 80 zone. That's what we'd be looking at. Break lows back down to, of course, things like the 38.2. Same with the S&P 500. Put call ratio, very interesting stat for the end of the day. VIX, continue to watch this. Continue to watch whether it's spiking out without the market doing its own thing. So we saw a spike there and then it's come back down quite aggressively. And watch that dollar index. Where are we with this dollar index right now? Leave the live stream on 24/7. I wish. I like Adam. I so rich, he says. I always invest in Apple. So dollar index, it was unstoppable a few minutes ago. It has found some resistance. It moved a little bit higher than we thought. Silver is at the support. So silver is right on that kind of key zone or key area. 24.30 zone. Finding some support. Look for price action. Look for lightning bolts here. $77 with $5. Keep it up, man. I'm probably fading a little bit here at 1 o'clock. So I want to keep the excitement in, and I like doing these pre-markets. So that's the kind of wrap up, I guess, of today. Sandola, thanks very much. I always appreciate it, but I think I probably will call it. And overall, I think this week could be very, very interesting for the markets. We're going to have also a bit of a question on Donald Trump's health. Is he fully recovered? You know, he's coming off that one, I don't know, some steroid that he took. If he crashes off that, the market may not like it either. Like if he doesn't do so well. So I am looking at that. I am definitely considering that could be a concern if it does happen. I believe it was 10 days or something. All right, everybody. Well, thank you very much for attending. We'll see you next Monday in the live stream or tomorrow with a video. Probably have it out about 12 to 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. In the US, that'll be after the market close. We'll talk about the daily close. We'll talk about the silver, the gold. We'll talk about put contracts, all of these types of things. Always appreciate it and appreciate each and every subscriber that came in today. And of course, the donations and memberships. I'll leave you with some music and have a very good day, night, or evening or afternoon.